And then we were sort of lost. And then Omer told me, why don't we connect air conditioners to the internet? And my first reaction was, that's the dumbest idea I've heard. But here we are 10 years in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CleanTechies podcast, where we interview ClimateTech founders and VCs to discuss all things building and investing to solve the biggest challenge of our generation, climate change. Today, we speak with Ran Roth, the co-founder and CTO of Sensibo, an IoT device company that connects your AC units to various services in order to help you use your AC unit more efficiently. Ran started with a tech background focused on data, and with his co-founder, decided he wanted to start a business. They didn't specifically focus on climate, but did want to do something good for the world. Of course, as implied, they eventually ended up building a ClimateTech company. In today's conversation, we discuss how they got started, their experience raising funds back in the aftermath of the CleanTech 1.0 crash, and the future of indoor climate control. It's a very punchy episode with a lot of great content, so we hope you enjoy it as much as we did recording it. All right, welcome to the show, Ran. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you for inviting me to speak about Sensibo.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you. So let's just kind of start from the beginning. Give us a quick intro to yourself and kind of what you're doing with Sensibo.
So I'm originally from a technological background. I am a computer scientist and physicist. I started my career in tech companies in Israel, in a company called Mobileye, where we did autonomous vehicles, and then other things that were related to computer vision and data. And I started Sensibo around 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago. In Sensibo, we are using data to improve the efficiency, comfort, and health of indoor climate.
Mm-hmm. So just looking at your background, I'm just kind of curious, how did you end up getting into this space? Why did you get motivated to build a company like Sensibo?
Yeah, so I wasn't always into air conditioning. I didn't know anything about the problem that I'm solving, but I like to solve problems that are meaningful and have data and machine learning in them. So I was working in a company where I did algorithms for ads. And it felt kind of, and then we were bought by Yahoo. And I didn't like the corporate world and felt that it was time for me to open something. And I really wanted to do something more meaningful that would also give value. So it would also be making money, but also be good for something else. And together with my co-founder, Omer, we were looking at like tons of ideas for what we would do. I think it's idea 77 or something. We scratched them one by one. And there were a few criterions. One of them was we wanted it to be something good for the world. We wanted data and machine learning to be meaningful. And we didn't want to do what everybody else were doing. And then we were sort of lost. And then Omer told me, why don't we connect air conditioners to the internet? And my first reaction was, that's the dumbest idea I've heard. But here we are 10 years in. So we looked at it and we understood that there is a big story in the energy that this thing is taking, in the toll it's taking on the planet, and how much it can be improved.
So I guess, was there any particular guiding factors that you use when determining an idea? You know, you want to start a company. This is obviously a climate tech company. It's solving a climate problem. Was there an interest in climate for you at a young age or early on in your career? Did you have this kind of interest always? Or is this something that along the way you just realized, hey, this is quite interesting, and actually the benefits of it are more than just kind of convenience. It's actually a climate thing. Just always curious to understand that journey.
Yeah, I think I wasn't like particularly interested in climate at a young age. I mean, I was vegetarian, for example, and I had all kind of ideals. So I was quite idealistic, but one of the things that happens to technical people is we tend to be very sort of data driven, and then that creates sometimes a little bit of sarcasm. But behind that sarcasm, I was always, looking to do good things. And then when I read about climate as a physicist, I did my first degree in physics and math. So I was very interested in the physical world and how we affect the planet, mostly from a data perspective. So I think a lot of things that are missing also today in the conversation is to be very methodological, because it's such a complex issue and it has so many factors. And I think that was something that I always wanted to understand more. And it wasn't the only thing. We weren't looking necessarily to open a climate company, but we wanted it to be something good, like to make people's life better. So I guess like maybe 50% interest in climate and then 100%.
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's not a bad thing. I think a lot of people sometimes are like, oh, it's disingenuous. Somebody's doing this company because it's in climate and they're not really interested in it. But the reality is that a lot of these solutions just need to be there for the climate. And it's okay if people kind of come around to developing these companies in that way. So I would be keen to talk a little bit about, so before we get into specifically what Sensibo is doing in detail, would be keen to understand what are some of the statistics around carbon emissions from AC and HVAC things in the world. Hey there. Quick break to remind any founders or VCs listening, if you are looking for deal flow, seeking to raise funding, looking for partners to help service your needs, or perhaps you're looking for corporate investment partners, feel free to reach out to us through our Slack channel, which can be found in the description. Because we meet a lot of people in this space, we set aside time each week to make introductions to the various people that we encounter. This is something we do free of charge in order to help these incredible companies solving climate change to scale. Looking forward to hearing from you in the Slack channel.
Yeah, so let's start from the big number. So the big number is that around the third, 33% of the energy that we produce goes into cooling and heating of spaces. Now that's a huge number, and to put it into perspectives, it's almost twice as much as the energy taken by cars. So it's a lot of energy. We usually think of energy as something moving things, like airplanes. Airplanes, by the way, take around 2 to 3% of the energy. But actually, just making ourselves comfortable is one of the greatest energy consumers and CO2 emission producers. So that's where we come from. And then when you look at cooling and heating, so a lot of it is heating, but cooling is also growing and is going to actually pass heating. And air conditioning is definitely a technology that has its upsides. I mean, when you look at places that didn't have air conditioners before, a lot of things were bad in these places. I mean, when you look at crime rates, everything, corruption, everything goes down once you have air conditioning. It's quite natural, right? But there is also research backing it up. So we understand that it's sort of, you could say, a human right to have an air conditioner today. People without their air conditioner can't live without it, especially in Israel here, where I'm based out of. But on the other hand, it's a big problem for the environment. And today there are around 1.5 billion air conditioners in the world. And they are together emitting a growing amount of pollution. And the thing is that, and CO2. And the thing is that we know that the world is also warming up. So it's like a vicious cycle where you put more air conditioners and then you heat the world even more.
Sorry, did you say that there was a specific number in terms of the air conditioning specifically that is emitted and in terms of the total carbon emissions globally?
So out of heating and cooling, around 7 to 2%, like around 20% out of the heating and cooling is today going to cooling, and about 80% goes to heating. But in about 20 years, it's going to be reversed. So there is going to be more energy even going into cooling, and that's because the world is heating up, and also because in a lot of places that are growing economies, people are installing more and more air conditioners.
Yeah,
So
that is quite interesting. It's something never considered. So you mentioned that the more air conditioners are in a place when, a place starts to get these, crime rates go down and quality of life goes up. Is that usually due to the fact that because people can afford to buy air conditioners, they're kind of achieving a certain level of growth that's very healthy for them? Can you comment on that a little bit more, just out of curiosity? Because it sounds like that's going to be a leading driver for more air conditioning purchase if our goals as a global kind of community are achieved in helping other people come out of poverty. Hey there. Are you building a climate tech business and looking for very specialized talent? Consider reaching out to our sponsors, NextWave Partners. NextWave are experts in talent acquisition, recruitment, and retention across the climate tech, renewables, and ESG spaces globally. So if your team is growing or you're looking to make a career change yourself, feel free to reach out to NextWave at next-wavepartners.com or reach out to one of their consultants directly via their LinkedIn page.
yes, definitely. So first of all, it's not just that people who can have more money buy ACs. The reason they buy ACs is because AC is something that I don't know if you've been to a very hot country in the summer, but it's really hard without an AC. And the reason why air conditioners are proven to reduce violence and to reduce corruption is because people just can breathe. It's really simple. It's very basic for all of us. So on the one hand, it's, you would say, a human right, like getting out of poverty, being able to afford an air conditioner. On the other hand, we have a big problem that's growing because people have more air conditioners, and then the world is, there are more carbon emissions associated, and eventually the world is heating up more. So we need even more air conditioners. So it's like a problem because you can't live with it, you can't live without it. I think that our goal is to use technology, data, and machine learning to improve our life and the future of the planet at the same time. And this is like a classic problem.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. So with that, I think let's get into a little bit more of the technology. So in particular, what exactly, in very simple terms for non-technical people, what is Sensibo doing? Are they building their own air conditioners? Are they interacting with existing air conditioners? Explain that for us and how you're actually making an impact.
Yes, so we have a device. Our main device is a controller that can be installed by anyone. So it's a do-it-yourself controller that turns disconnected, regular, so to say, dumb air conditioners into smarter air conditioners that are connected to all the data that you have on the internet, that they learn your habits, they get more sensors, and then they make smarter decisions. So it's a really simple installation process. We don't manufacture our own air conditioners. We're not an air conditioning company. We're primarily a control, sensing, and data company.
And so when you install these kind of sensors, what are the benefits of it? How is it reducing the actual carbon emissions? What are the key data inputs that help kind of measure it and keep this lower? Because if you're working with existing technology and we're not seeing, for example, a step up basis in the efficiency of these air conditioning units, then what is your technology able to do, and how are they able to actually reduce that total emissions?
So I think you should first consider, and when I was started Sensibo and I started realizing how I'm using my air conditioner. So the first thing you should consider is ACs are pretty efficient already. Okay, they are pretty efficient machines, and you have the laws of thermodynamics that tell you that you can't be much more efficient than that. Okay, you can be, but not by much. And at least the new ones are very efficient. The problem is not with the AC itself, but the way we control it today is almost criminal. The fact that you have an air conditioner that only has a temperature sensor, one temperature sensor located inside the unit, it's like being blind to the environment. And we know that with data, we can save 20% on average in air conditioning energy use, and by extension also of CO2 emissions. So the reason for that is that it's just so dumb what it's doing today, right? A lot like we know from our database, everything. We have a huge database. We have hundreds of thousands of data points, like of people using the product every day, and we know that around more than 30% of the people actually set it to a set point that's not even achievable by their system. So the first thing we give you is we give you control, so you can control your unit with your phone, from your computer, from your smartwatch. So it's a really cool gadget. But then very quickly, people are starting to realize how their AC works, and they put more and more advanced features and smart modes in the software, and they save a huge amount of energy.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is actually quite interesting. Right now in New York, we've got this time of year where it's actually really pleasant in the evening. It's quite, like 60 degrees or so, 50, 55 or something. And during the day, it's very warm, but I tend to be not home during the day. And I'm like, okay, if I'm not home during the day and I leave the windows open, by the time I get home, it's going to be very hot. So, like, how could I maybe instead of leaving my AC on all day, which I don't do, I tend to just be like, okay, I'll just endure it when I get home. I'd rather maybe 30 minutes ahead of time have it turn on and get the room cool down. So this is kind of interesting right now. This is particularly what I'm my small problems that I'm dealing with right now in New York. This is quite fascinating. So I'd like to understand specifically, I guess once you started building the company, so this does have a hardware device component plus kind of the software side of things, correct?
Yes, so it's a small device. It's about the size of my palm, and
Mhm.
you can put it anywhere in the room.
Okay, got it. And then that will just kind of link up with your air conditioning unit and your connected internet, so you have kind of virtual control of it. So when building a product like this is the thing I think would be really interesting to understand is this is a hardware and software solution. So how do you go about building this? Once you guys decided on the idea and you're like, hey, we're gonna go forward with this. How did you test it to make sure that there was product market fit? And what was your kind of initial MVP to just get things going?
Yes. So first of all, before I answer the question, just about your specific needs, and it's amazing to see like these small specific needs add up, because when you save energy and millions of others do the same, then it adds up to something very big. Just we actually can use your geolocation of the phone, and then you don't even have to turn on the air conditioner yourself. So that's one of the features, for example. So it's a very common and heavily used feature by our users. And regarding the question about how we started and how was the MVP, so because we are technical people, so it was pretty easy for us to set up a POC, proof of concept. We used the Raspberry Pi, which is a hardware device that is very easy to start with, so it's not custom. And we just built it ourselves. We handed around 10 to 20 of those that we actually made ourselves, and saw the reaction of people. So we did do a test. I think it's a good idea to do a test. But then I think what we didn't realize is how difficult it's going to be to move from a POC into a full product, and all the other things that we're going to find out along the way about what you can actually do with data. So that part had to wait. So I think it's a mix. You can do some kind of POC, but then you also have to make some gambles along the way. So that was our story. At least we did do a product market fit. We knew that we were on the right track, that there was something big. But then the way from having a POC to actually having marketing and sales and manufacturing and getting the plastics and the technology and the cloud, that's a long way to go.
Hey there, thanks for listening to this episode. If you made it this far, it's likely that you're enjoying the show, so I wanted to ask your help. If you're enjoying it, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts and share with somebody in the same industry who might find this interesting. And if you're interested in getting summaries of these episodes, go subscribe to our newsletter that comes out on LinkedIn and Substack. Links can be found in the description. Thanks for your help in growing the reach of this show. Yeah, could you talk a little bit more about that? I mean, there's a lot of climate tech companies that are going to have some type of hardware component involved. So I'd be keen to understand, how did you manage using kind of a non-customized device first, and then getting to a point where you could get enough funding to go and then either build a manufacturing plant or have enough volume to go to another manufacturing facility. Could you talk about that kind of process? I think that'd be very fascinating for a lot of founders listening.
So first of all, I guess it depends on the company. We are lucky to have a device that's relatively not too complicated. Of course, if we're doing direct carbon capture or something like that, that's a different story. In our case, what we did was we really did a lot of the things ourselves and made sure we actually understood the technology. We understood, like I didn't know anything about hardware before starting, so I had to read a lot, to ask people, and then to be very mindful of the budget, because we actually started with a very low amount of funding. Yeah, but it is a challenge, definitely, to get it right.
Was there any certain point where I don't know, like I'm keen to know this particular challenge. Let's say you were going from kind of a non-customized device to your own. Did you seek to manufacture it yourself with your own manufacturing facility, or go to a manufacturer that could then build it for you?
No, it usually doesn't make sense to own a plant unless you're
Mm-hmm.
Tesla or something. You're so big that it makes sense. But at
Mm-hmm.
low volumes, it always makes sense to use a third party, what is called contract manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
So that we even today we don't have our own manufacturing
Mm-hmm.
facilities.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then so when
But
you first, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, I said, but the technology, how you make the product, you have to really understand. Like I understand every single bit of hardware in our device.
Okay, good. So, but when you approached them for the first time, I'm assuming you maybe had some customers and you had some demand. How were you able to get that? Were there any kind of pushbacks from the manufacturer saying, this is too small, we need something bigger? How does that look when you're a very small company, when you're a startup? Because manufacturers prefer to deal in volume, is my understanding. So, we'd be keen to understand that specific kind of discussions or challenges there.
I guess as an entrepreneur and the founder, you have to look for the right people. So you can speak to 10 different people and they are not the right partners until you find the right one, and you just need one. So
Mm-hmm.
we found the right one, and it was not too big and not too small. It's just you want to be in a medium. So in the beginning, we were really a small customer. Today, we're one of their biggest customers. So they grew with us. But it doesn't always make sense to go to the big manufacturing companies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. That's helpful to understand. And in terms of the timeline, you mentioned you started out with a very low amount of funding. Could you walk us through maybe some of the milestones that you were able to achieve that helped you then go and raise larger rounds to then really expand, and maybe talk about along this point? I'd be keen to understand where was the inflection point where you felt like, hey, this is really working, this is growing very quickly, and it kind of started to take off massively.
Yeah, so one of the best things about our device today is that we have the most comprehensive support for any type of air conditioner. And that in our case, that was a big challenge. So today, Sensibo has the best support, and we can actually use data from tens of thousands of models of customers that are using their ACs and upgrading them and saving 20% on energy. But that took a lot of time to develop. So along the way, our first model wasn't as good as the second model. The second model, we didn't give up. It was very difficult. I mean, we were almost bankrupt. But then we said, okay, we have this one more second version that we're coming out with. And that just made all the difference, because all the mistakes that we've made along the way, we learned from them and implemented them in the second hardware. And then it just, that was a big inflection point for us.
And then specifically around the funding, what was it like because it looks like you started kind of around 2013 with this. Climate tech wasn't exactly necessarily the biggest topic at the time, especially probably in Israel. So I'm kind of keen to understand the investors' interest. Like, how did you pitch it? Because I know that there's this tendency for startups to pitch differently depending on what's hot at the moment. So what was that like trying to raise money throughout that time? And then when did it get a little bit quote unquote easier?
So I'll tell you one thing. When we raised money, if you said, so the word climate tech didn't exist, there was clean tech. And if you said clean tech to an investor, the meeting would end right there because it was just after they lost a lot of money on all the clean tech ventures of biofuels and all that back in the 2000s. So it was like, I think we're seeing now a revival of climate tech, which I'm really glad about it. But we weren't able to use the word climate tech, so we said energy, and we said, okay, it will be good for the world, it will save energy, and that's how we messaged it. And it was very difficult. I can tell you that we were never one of the startups that grew out of some kind of hype, but more of really smart and lean product work. So and even today, I mean, we've never raised a huge amount of money, but we're able to build a business that's working and growing. So that's that's how we chose to build it. I think today there are more opportunities for climate tech companies.
I think it's quite interesting. You mentioned you didn't have to raise a whole lot of money. I think this is something we're seeing right now, with venture firms having difficulty raising money actually. So there's a lot of money raised in the past few years, and now the LPs are tightening up. So it's actually quite interesting. I didn't ask this yet, but what is the financial model? Is there a component that's kind of an ongoing recurring revenue somehow? Or are you just selling the devices? What does that look like, and how does it kind of play into being able to bootstrap it in some ways?
Yes. So first of all, there is a one-time sale for a consumer who buys the device, and in that device there are already like a huge amount. There is a huge amount of features, very complex, that are given with the price of the device forever. And then there is an opt-in subscription for consumers. Also, we have a special offer for businesses where they can deploy thousands of devices or hundreds or thousands of devices in their premises, which is also a different model of licensing. But basically, like we have this one-time sale, then opt-in subscription. The opt-in subscription is more about more advanced energy savings and more smart modes that are available. I think the able to get a lot of people don't talk about it because everybody's talking about recurring revenue and all that, but a lot of the important things for a semi-bootstrapped business like Sensibo is actually getting the money back fast so that you can put it back into work. And actually, that model works better with hardware sales. So there are a lot of things that are complicated with hardware, but you have to use the advantages that you do have. So if you have a hardware business, think of the advantage you have. You get a lot of money up front.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. Something I didn't necessarily consider. One thing I'd be curious about is there's a lot of companies out there trying to work with utilities to help manage peak demand and things like that. Is there any aspect of what you guys do that interacts with the local utilities to try to do that? I know those are very difficult and you have to develop those partnerships on a regional basis, but is that another aspect of how your software works?
Yes, we're working with dozens of utility companies in demand response programs and also energy management. We help their customers save 20% on energy, and at the same time, it's not only about saving energy; it's also about managing it. And as you mentioned, when the demand is high, sometimes the CO2 emissions, you actually have to open a backup to turn on a backup facility, and at that point you can save a lot of money and a lot of resources and a lot of CO2 emissions. So we're working in partnerships with such companies.
So with those companies, is there a specific revenue model that you're able to derive from that, or is it mainly that partnering with them helps you to then get kind of a channel to sell more devices? What does that typically look like, and any advice to founders pursuing these types of utility models because they're notoriously difficult to work with?
Yeah. So the first advice is like be patient and don't necessarily rely on it. Okay. So it takes a lot of time. When we started, we talked with utilities and we realized it's going to take forever. So we said, okay, first we'll sell on Amazon, we'll sell through our website, we'll find other channels. But then when we waited more and we talked to them, then it takes years, but eventually it comes. So the first thing is you need a lot of patience. And in terms of the model, it varies a lot. So in some cases, we have they are just a channel. In other cases, there is some kind of revenue share with the end customer. If you decide to close your AC in peak time, you're getting some kind of reward, and we get some reward. And then the utility company, of course, gets their own value from this. But also, we are also working with helping these companies, and I think that's another advice I could give. A lot of these companies are looking for more connection with customers. And we have like a lot of good connection with the customer, helping them save money, save energy, be more comfortable, all the benefits of our devices. We also have air quality sensors, so breathing better. So we have a very high engagement with our users.
Mm-hmm. One thing I'm curious about is this air quality aspect. Something it's come up on the show once before, and I'm just kind of curious, since you've been doing this for a while, do you have a lot of data that you're able to kind of sort through and see once a home has higher air quality, are there a lot of health benefits that are very immediately noticeable? Do you have any data on this that you've been able to collect over the years?
Yes. So first of all, air quality, we see it as part of indoor climate. Okay. So it's another aspect of how we look at indoor climate, and it's very related to air conditioning because you probably heard of, or you maybe experienced, I hope you didn't, but of air conditioning sickness. Air conditioners are responsible for they bring air from outside or even from inside, but they are very tightly coupled with the air that enters your home. And in terms of the effects of pollution, so they're pretty devastating. And we usually think of pollution as something that is bad outside, but actually inside it's much worse. So we see a lot of effects about air pollution. We have, for example, we know when you should change your filters. People who change their filters suddenly feel much better. We also have air quality monitors. So we see a lot of effects and people reporting that they're feeling much better. Some of the things, by the way, you will never feel it until you're very old. Around 1 in 10 people die from the effects of indoor pollution. But usually that happens when you're old.
Yeah, I think it's something interesting that I've thought about a little bit because I have this desire to live to an older age. I think that younger people have a pretty high likelihood to live beyond 100 because of medical advancement. So I'm just kind of have thought about this a bit, but it's difficult especially as a young person to think about, oh, like I need to be really careful about every decision I make now because maybe I don't notice it now, but I'll notice it later, right? So maybe I should take it easy when I'm playing soccer or whatnot. But that's it. That's an interesting point. I am kind of curious about this. I'm curious, and maybe you have some thoughts on this, but I am curious if there will, or when I should say, when insurance companies will get involved with saying, okay, kind of like, what is your, let's measure your air quality at your home to make sure, like we know, we can measure some of these things and put it into the amortization model. So it's kind of interesting to me. Well, one other thing I'd like to go over is talent acquisition. So this is a type of business that largely is kind of like you could look at it from a pure technology perspective, but also as the climate aspect. What have you done to kind of attract talent, and what has that been like? What has that experience been like? What do you look for?
So I think that climate excites a lot of people. A lot of people, and that's the first thing I think about talent. I want people in my company to be really aligned with the mission. So, and it makes a lot of things easier when you have a mission, and it's a huge advantage because you have so many disadvantages versus, the Amazon and Googles of the world. But when you have a good message and a good product, I think it attracts the right talent and the best talent sometimes. So I think that's the first thing, to be a mission-oriented company. And so when I tell people, hey, about the stats I just gave you and about how we're saving people energy, the first thing that we do is we give them the product. Hey, try the product, and they come back and they are already sold sometimes. So it's really nice. And then, understanding, I think one thing I understand today from my experience as a founder is how important the messaging is. So it's not enough just to do, you also need to tell, hey, this is what we're doing. We're improving the world. We're saving 20% on energy. We're making a smarter AC to a smarter life. So this message resonates with people. And I think that's...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it is important to have that alignment. I think it's interesting. I would be keen, I guess that is fascinating. I think it's talent is important aspect of it. It's my day job. That's what I spend a lot of time on. But the alignment bit that you spoke with is usually the first thing that people mention. So I think there's perhaps some people could stand to practice on improving how they are positioning their brand, because depending on how you position it will attract certain talent as well as certain customers, right? And potentially as well the value aligned investors. It's just a very common theme that's come up. Okay, so one other thing, I like to a very optimistic person. I like to look at the future. Kind of, would you mind talking to us a little bit about your thoughts on the future of Sensibo and where it can go? What kind of verticals can you use your existing talent and understanding to expand into and to make a greater impact?
Yeah, so I think the air conditioning is slowly changing, air conditioning control and air conditioning in general. There are a few trends in our industry. I'm not a big predictor of the future. Like we've all seen how it was to predict the future in 2020. So there are lots of black swans, right? But I can tell you about some trends in what's happening in indoor climate control and in our field. The first thing is that people realize that air and climate is something that are engulfed with 24/7, and they are more aware of it, both of the energy and both of what they're breathing. And we see this from year to year. We see energy being, again, a problem in the world. And I think that this has a lot of effect about governments, about businesses, about consumers wanting to save more on energy. And the other thing is air conditioning is definitely a growing segment. We're talking about tripling the number of air conditioner units in 2 decades. And also the heaters that today we're using a lot of gas and a lot of fossil fuels. All of this will change mostly to air conditioning technology, because heat pumps are basically air conditioners. It's the same technology. So we're going to see more and more air conditioners, more and more electrification of heating, like they do with cars. And the control of the brain of the air conditioner is going to take a more and more important place, much more than it is today. It's not just an appliance. It's something that we breathe around 23,000 times a day. So it's like probably the thing we consume most is air, and we feel temperature every day, all the time. So it's something that's really, people are being more aware of the quality of their air conditioning and of their air.
Yeah, I think it is something I feel like is becoming more recognizable. There's just this is just one small example, but it's now been my Amazon Alexa will tell me if there's air quality warnings in New York, right? Whereas like I don't recall this ever happening in the past, right? It's something that they've added. I'm assuming with the intention to try to add awareness or raise awareness of these types of things. But I do think it's important for people to be able to kind of have that tangible feeling of it and understand it slowly for true change to happen. So with that, I guess kind of just to wrap things up here, what would you say are your asks for the audience, or just kind of things that you're excited about in the future and where people can reach you?
Okay, so first of all, reaching me is quite easy. I have a LinkedIn. You can write on our website. www.sensibo.com. And regarding my asks from people, so I don't know if I'm in a position to ask people, but like I would say that, be mindful about your life and about climate in general. Think about whether sometimes you have counterintuitive things in climate, and actions that look good are not good, and actions that look bad are actually better. So try to be analytic about it, and about our specific angle of air conditioning. Make your AC smart, because it's really important both for the climate and both for your health and comfort. So that's like, that was like the piece of maybe some kind of advertising for ourselves. But really, I do believe it, and that's why I'm doing precisely what I'm doing.
Yeah, very good. Well, I appreciate you coming on. It's very obvious to tell that you enjoy what you're doing. You're very passionate about this. So thank you for coming on and sharing this. I'm definitely gonna go check this out and see if I can sort my air conditioning issues for the summer. I have two windows in my house, two in my apartment, and my desk is in the complete other side of the building. So it's very difficult. It's very warm next to next to this one, especially when I'm recording podcasts. But we'll have to look into this. Maybe it can help solve these problems for me.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, very good. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you very much, and have a good day.
Yeah, you too.